This week on Vaticano, follow Pope Francis through his daily activities and get an exclusive look at the charitable activity of the Catholic Church in Venezuela and learn about the humanitarian situation there. Does G.K. Chesterton have a chance at being proclaimed a saint? Meet Dale Ahlquist, who has the latest updates on his cause for canonization. Join us for all this and more on this week's Vaticano. The last week of March will go down as one of the busiest weeks of the pontificate. It started in the city of Loreto, Italy, where Pope Francis celebrated the solemnity of the Annunciation at the Basilica of the Holy House. The shrine holds the relic of the so-called Holy House of Mary. Tradition holds that the Holy House arrived in Loreto in 1294, after a miraculous rescue from the Holy Land during the retreat of the Crusaders from Palestine. After the celebration of the Mass, the Holy Father spoke of the significance of the relic of the Holy House, saying that in this delicate situation of today's world, the family founded on marriage between a man and a woman takes on an importance and an essential mission.
It is necessary to rediscover the plan drawn by God for the family, to reaffirm its greatness and irreplaceability in the service of life and society.
The Holy House is also the home of the young, said the Pope, because here the Virgin Mary, the young woman full of grace, continues to speak to the new generations. And that's why the Holy Father chose this place to sign the post-synodal apostolic exhortation entitled Christus Vivit, Christ Lives. The exhortation reflects on the three key themes that were discussed during the 2018 Synod on Youth: listening to the Word of God, discernment, and decision. This apostolic exhortation concludes the 2-year period during which the Church has intensely focused on understanding and reaching young people. The following day, Pope Francis made an unexpected visit to the Pontifical Lateran University, where he led the Lenten meditation, an appointment that the university organizes every year for the academic community. Pope Francis called the students to a cultural revolution to counteract a growing individualism and reminded them to always put Jesus at the center because he is the antidote to individualism. After the visit, the Pope went on to visit Rome City Hall at the Capitoline Hill. The mayor of Rome, Virginia Raggi, welcomed the Pope and showed him the palace that once belonged to the Roman pontiffs. After the private meeting with the mayor, Pope Francis addressed city officials, focusing on the theme of welcoming, which the Holy Father says has always been a mission of Rome.
It carries a mission and an ideal aimed at overcoming mountains and seas, and to be shared with everyone, near and far, regardless of which people they belong to, whichever language they speak, and whatever color is their skin.
To mark the visit, the mayor renamed a room after the Pope's encyclical on the environment, called Laudato Si', and also announced a scholarship in the encyclical's honor. With the visit, Pope Francis became the 4th pontiff to visit Rome City Hall. During his general audience, Pope Francis honored the 85-year-old nun, Sister Maria Concetta Esu, for her missionary work in Congo. The Holy Father said that the award he gave her is a sign of affection and a thank you for all the work in the midst of our African brothers and sisters, in the service of life, of children, mothers, and families. Sister Maria has been working for around 60 years as a midwife and has helped to deliver thousands of babies. On Friday, March the 29th, the Holy Father met with participants in the Internal Forum Conference organized by the Apostolic Penitentiary. Around 700 young priests and seminarians gathered for the 30th edition of the Internal Forum to learn the sections of canon law regarding confession. During his address, the Holy Father reflected on the importance of the seal of confession, even though it's not always understood by the modern mentality.
The sacramental seal is indispensable, and no human power has, nor may it claim, jurisdiction over it.
Pope Francis ended the day with the annual Lenten penitential service at St. Peter's Basilica.
Il Signore sia con voi.
After the reading from the Gospel, the Holy Father encouraged those present to restore the place of the sacrament of confession in a pastoral mission and in the life of the faithful. Following the homily, Pope Francis led a silent examination of conscience and was the first to receive the sacrament of reconciliation. At the conclusion of the week, the Holy Father spent 2 days in Morocco on an apostolic voyage. Get ready to take a look at Holy See diplomacy in action. Welcome back. You're watching Vaticano.
This is part 2 of the reflection on the panel discussion at the UN Geneva Library about multilateralism that took place a few weeks ago. Professor Dr. Alfred de Zayas, a Catholic, American lawyer and historian, spoke with me about the UN and about multilateralism. Pope Francis said, and I quote, "An indispensable condition for the success of multilateral diplomacy is the goodwill and good faith of the parties, their readiness to deal with one another fairly and honestly, and their openness to accepting the inevitable compromises arising from disputes." Now, does this reflect the reality of the United Nations today?
Unfortunately not. In my 40 years working as a staff member of the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, as an independent expert for the Human Rights Council, as president of a major NGO, as a member of numerous other NGOs that interrelate with the office and with the United Nations all the time, I have seen so much bad faith. I have seen so much lying, so much corrupting of terms that it's going to be difficult to have efficient multilateralism if people are always trying to take advantage of the other, and when they are intransigent and refuse any kind of compromise. I've seen that again and again. And the media, unfortunately, becomes the sounding board of government officials who are putting out fake news, fake law, in order to have fake diplomacy. So that is one of the obstacles we have to deal with.
Despite these obstacles, multilateralism has a long history, but it is principally associated with the era after World War II, during which there was a blooming of multilateral agreements led primarily by the United States. Today, for most states in the world, multilateralism and collective cooperation are the only options for the effective pursuit of their foreign policy objectives and the realization of their national interests.
Multilateralism is essential for countries big and small. This is what we believe in. And it is essential for the reasons international cooperation, it brings peace, for security, for a rules-based economic order, for social progress, which is very close to our hearts, and for protection and promotion of human rights, for maintaining cultural diversity, food security. All these are reasons which makes multilateralism very important, especially for small island developing states we will have a voice in the multilateral fora only if we can go along with international cooperation.
In the multilateral forum of the UN Geneva, the presence of the Holy See, represented by the nuncio, remains important, and that he often uses his diplomatic skills to discuss with other members situations and topics that are, for example, significant to the Catholic Church.
It's not going to be very easy, even for the nuncio, on friendly terms, to change the situation, because even if he persuades the ambassador might even tell him, I agree with you. Well, what do you want? What do you want me to do? I have orders. And that is what has made the multilateral system here less effective.
So it is something that, in your opinion, from your evaluation, is necessary. There is no substitute for that, correct?
Correct. We cannot afford to have little bilateral agreements among the rich to exploit the poor. And thanks for the non-governmental organizations that sometimes have the courage to tell governments they are wrong.
The experts said that one needed to accept that multilateralism is not perfect, but that the alternatives would be worse.
Oppression, first of all, oppression. The second word, I think, blackout, because I experienced 6 days without any electricity, energy, water, and telephone lines. And also cacerolazo. Cacerolazo, it's a Spanish word, but it's the moment in which all the people beat the pots, contesting, the line of government.
Ci sono adesso delle urla contro Maduro. È incredibile, questa è la Guaira, attaccata a Caracas, siamo a 20 km. Sentite le urla. Sembra il popolo proprio non ne possa più.
Fai ancora, Alessandro.
Alessandro Monteduro is the head of the Italian section of the international Catholic aid organization called Aid to the Church in Need. He traveled to Venezuela at the beginning of March to see the humanitarian situation there and to witness how the church is living in the midst of the economic crisis.
Fate questa pentola solidale, la fate da tanto tempo. Per quale ragione adesso è necessario anche aumentare il ritmo delle pentole solidali?
Perché manca l'alimentazione, soprattutto per i bambini. Quindi noi sì, ogni 15 giorni facciamo questa per un gruppo grande, però tutti i giorni diamo da mangiare circa 50-55 bambini.
Unbelievable. The love of the church by Sister Patrizia, by Padre Alfredo, Father Alfredo, Father Martin. The love of the church because in the last years, sisters, priests, all the church not only is taking care of the pastoral activity, but first of all of the humanitarian approach. And so without church, for the Venezuelan people, for the most of the Venezuelan people now, shouldn't be possible to live.
Bienvenidos. Vamos a hacer una pequeña oración para pedirle a Dios, para darle gracias a Dios y pedirle que siempre nos provea lo necesario para comer. En el nombre del Padre, del Hijo y del Spirito Santo. Amen.
Noi preghiamo tutti i giorni per tutti quanti che fanno di aiuto a questa
Venezuela che sta così ferita.
Abbiamo incontrato tante famiglie normali che soffrono la denutrizione dei bambini, soprattutto dei bambini sotto i 5 anni.
Noi l'anno scorso ne abbiamo...
Figlie di avvocati, figlie di dottori.
Sì, ma per tutti è uguale, perché non si trova l'alimentazione, non si trova i generi alimentari per comprarli. Quindi la gente vive qui con una borsa al mese che il governo le facilita, che poi pasta 2 kg di riso, 2 kg di pasta, 1 chilo di fagioli neri, 1 chilo di zucchero, e in un mese come fa una famiglia con 4, 5, 6 figli? I bambini vivono dei rifiuti delle immondizie, per esempio. Tra le immondizie cercano qualcosa, piccoli e adulti anche. E quindi io in 40 anni non avevo mai visto una crisi così forte, così accentuata. Mai. Ho passato momenti difficili, eccetera, però mai come questa così prolungata nel tempo.
Because at the moment in which you have a minimum salary of roughly $6 and to buy a pizza margherita, a little beer, because I offered pizza margherita and a little beer, I told the priest I met one evening during the blackout, and so the cost of pizza margherita and little beer is $8. Remember, $6 the salary for a month and $8 only pizza margherita. You can understand like isn't possible for all the people to live.
Ogni giorno la popolazione soffre moltissimo per la mancanza di tutto quello che è necessario per la vita e soprattutto per questa fiducia che dobbiamo avere nelle poteri dello Stato, che sono soltanto per servire al governo e non alle necessità della popolazione.
Cardinal is living experience now his life in Caracas like a normal person, taking care only of the faithfuls in, I have to say, poor apartment. And obviously it wasn't possible now to imagine now the luxury. And so the way with which the cardinal, the bishops, the priests, the semi-young priests, the seminarians now approaching, taking care of the faithfuls is really wonderful, really wonderful. And I want to underline, like now, to help the church is the best way to help all the people, all the Venezuelan people, because without church it isn't possible to reach with our generosity, with the generosity of our viewers, the people there who are now suffering unbelievable.
Stay with us. In a few moments, Dale Ahlquist will tell you more about G.K. Chesterton and his chances for sainthood. More on Vaticano begins now.
Today we have the great pleasure of interviewing Dale Ahlquist. He's the president of the American Chesterton Society. Dale, welcome to our show.
Thank you. God bless you, Alexei.
You are very well known to our viewers, also as a creator and host of the popular in EWTN TV series, which calls The Apostle of Common Sense, right? And today you're in Rome. What is your main reason to be here?
Well, my main reason for visiting Rome was actually I'm part of leading a pilgrimage of students from Chesterton Academy from Minneapolis, Minnesota in America. It's a school that I helped start that is a classical curriculum, but G.K. Chesterton is the patron of the school because he represents the model thinker, and we've been bringing our students to Chesterton every other year since the school founded. And we have about 100 people here with us right now. And while I'm here, I'm doing a little work on pushing Chesterton's cause forward to realization, to get Chesterton canonized.
And how is it going now? In which state it is?
Right now, the cause has not yet been opened, but there's been an investigation ordered by the Bishop of Northampton, England, and that has recommended that Chesterton's cause be open. We're waiting to see if the bishop will open the cause.
And what are the key virtues that you would like to underline of Chesterton?
G.K. Chesterton was hugely humble. He was a big man who knew how to be small, and his holiness was something that was apparent to everyone who encountered him. His goodness, people were drawn to his goodness. It's one of the reasons why he has brought so many people into the Catholic faith, because obviously he knows how to defend the faith, and he makes it attractive. He's got great wit and great joy and great use of the language, and all those things are attractive as a literary artist. But what they're drawn to the most is his goodness. And Chester was, during his lifetime, was someone who knew how to argue and how to defend the faith, but never made enemies. So the people who disagreed with him always loved him. And that's the kind of people we are trying to be in today's world, engaging our enemies in a way that will convert them and make them still love us even though they disagree with us.
This is what is actually written in the prayer card that you give it to us. Angels can fly because they can take themselves lightly, right?
Angels can fly because they take themselves lightly.
It's beautiful. If some person who would pray for intercession of Chesterton will receive some favors, what should they do? Who should they contact?
Well, they should start by contacting the American Chesterton Society, the Society of Gilbert Keith Chesterton, which I'm the president of, which will be the petitioner for Chesterton's cause, and that's very easy to do through our website at chesterton.org, and that's where they can get these prayer cards there, and the books about Chesterton, and learn more about the man and the writer.
Is there anything, any obstacles of his cause of canonization?
Well, there's always obstacles to everything that's good, right? And people unfortunately try to spread misinformation about G.K. Chesterton, just as they spread misinformation about the Catholic Church and about great people throughout history, great saints throughout history, are still attacked for one reason or another. And those are false attacks with G.K. Chesterton. So he's been accused of being a racist or an anti-Semite, and those things simply aren't true. And in one of my new books that I just wrote, I make the case of why those accusations are false. But the other thing he's been accused of, Alexei, you may find this surprising, he's been accused of being fat. And being fat is actually not a sin. I don't know if people know that, but there are other saints who were fat, and one of them was a pope who was recently canonized, Pope St. John the 23rd. And St. Thomas Aquinas, one of the greatest saints of the Catholic Church, he was fat. And G.K. Chesterton suffered from the same largeness, but it wasn't because he was a glutton, and I think that's the point we want to make. He was not a glutton.
And also a miracle is required for beatification, right? Is there one?
Well, remember now, the miracle is the last step. First, the cause has to be opened, then a postulator is appointed, and they have to do all their research and all their investigation, and then they make the case to the Congregation for Saints, who then would declare the candidate venerable, and then you need the miracle. That's the vote from heaven. And there have been people who have prayed for Chesterton's intercession, and there have been some very spectacular results, but I can't tell you what any of those things are right now, but you'll hear about them someday.
Let's ask this way: if someone wants to pray Chesterton, in which particular maybe field Chesterton can help?
Oh, that's a great question. G.K. Chesterton and his beloved wife Frances, who I think should also be canonized, they could not have children, and it was a biological problem that Frances had. And many Catholic couples have prayed to Gilbert and Frances Chesterton to be able to conceive. If they've had problems having babies, they've asked Chesterton and his wife for help, and there have been some answers to those prayers.
You are an evangelical convert to Catholicism, and now you also have become a Catholic apologist. And your personal story resembles Chesterton's. What is your personal story with G.K. Chesterton?
Well, it's funny that we are here in Rome because I started reading Chesterton here in Rome on my honeymoon. That's when I started reading Chesterton, and I was a Baptist, and he was really my introduction to the Catholic faith, although I didn't know it at the time. I was reading this wonderful English writer who had a great influence on C.S. Lewis, which is why I started reading Chesterton. And the more I read Chesterton, the less I was interested in reading C.S. Lewis, because I realized he was going deeper and farther and broader, and was a very profound writer. And I just could not get enough of Chesterton. But then I slowly was realizing that I was becoming Catholic, that all of my Protestant objections to the faith were coming to an end, and Chesterton just slowly brought me to the doors of the Catholic Church.
So this was your story that started from Rome, that leads you to Rome, right? To Roman Catholic
Which is
Church.
very Chestertonian, because the very first line in the book, The Everlasting Man, is, there are two ways of getting home, and one of them is to stay there. The other way is you have to go all the way around the world in order to get home. And ironically, I started reading Chesterton in Rome, and here I am in Rome again.
Dale Ahlquist, thank you very much for being with us.
It was a great pleasure, Alexei. I hope I can see you again sometime.